Got it.
Okay, I got it.
This is mute. Recording. Okay, you're recording.
Good morning, everyone. Good day. This week's Parsha of Noah records for us two generations that led to the coming of Avraham Avinu and a different turn in world society. First generation that the Torah records for us is what we call the Dor HaMabul, the generation of the great flood. It says, "Vatimolei ha'oretz chomos." The world is full of, now chomos is it's Hamas, same word. So it's lawlessness, it's brutality, it's robbery, it's murder, it's exploitation. It's a world that decent people, if there are any left, find it difficult to live in. So the Rabbanu Shalom tells Noah, "Vinini mashchisam mesoretz." I'll destroy them. We're going to destroy the world. So the Lord, so to speak, presses the reset button and cancel everything. You know, you have that on our holy computers. You know, when something goes wrong, what you do is turn it off. Then you start again. So that, in effect, is what Noah is told. From you, I'm going to start the world again. Now, that's an awesome responsibility. Because whatever we may want, we don't want to be responsible for the whole world. It's the end of the day, it's more than enough that I'm responsible for myself. And here, the whole world will come with you. Noah enters the ark. However we imagine the ark, we cannot imagine it. You know, the problem is that we learned all of this when we were children. So we have a picture in our mind that the kindergarten teacher gave us of a boat and animals sticking their head out the portholes. And so that's our concept of the Teva and of what happened here. And naturally, that's not in depth what happened. How does everybody fit into the Teva? I mean, you put in 3 hippopotami and 2 elephants, and you got a full deck. How does this work? Torah doesn't tell us. Torah, in its simplicity, reduces us to children. Later on, the Meforshim, the Midrashim, Kabbalah, Musar, Chassidus will expand and expand and expand on the story to give it a different color, a different meaning, a different understanding. But at the end of the day, we don't know what happened there. We know that God said he's going to destroy the world, and he destroys the world. And it's rebuilt through Noah. And the Dora Mabul, that wicked generation, is erased. But the nature of human beings does not change, because Noah is alive, and Noah has 3 sons. I spoke about that yesterday for Mincha. Each one different as can be, and freedom of choice still exists within the world, and the world starts to rebuild itself post-trauma. But the memory of the flood, the memory of the disaster, remains with the world. And generations later, when the world already has hundreds of thousands of people, it's not just 4 people, 4 males and their wives from the ark, but now the world is full, it's resettled. So we don't know how long that took. We don't know the process, but the memory of what happened is still present in their mind. They know that one way or another, they're survivors. They're children of survivors. They're grandchildren of survivors. And all psychologists have shown us that descendants of survivors have that imprint upon their personality and upon their psyche. There are many psychological books that have been written and studies that have been written about the descendants of survivors of the Holocaust. How long does the trauma last? Does it ever go away? And how it affects people. So the Torah, again, doesn't tell us how this happens. But let's put it in terms, I think, that we can relate to. The United Nations has a meeting, and there are 180 countries, and they decide we're going to build a better world. We're going to take all of our efforts to prevent the flood from coming again. So the flood came because it was a lawless world, what in the Tanakh is called Ish HaYosher Be'einav Yaseh. Everybody is entitled to do their own thing. We're going to have a more disciplined world. Not only are we going to have a more disciplined world, we're going to have a world where everyone will be controlled and unified. And the Torah tells us that they had Sofa Echad, Sofa achat udvorim achodim. And one language. What does the Torah mean by one language? What language was it? Undoubtedly Yiddish. What language was it? And how can you say they had one language? We know the nature of people that even when you have one language, if you come from Atlanta, Georgia, and the other person comes from Seattle, Washington, it's one language, but they don't sound the same. It's not Dvorim Achodim. The nature of people is we speak differently. So what does the Torah mean here? On this, naturally, there are many paths upon which to go. But the simple one is what we have in our time, what we would call cancel culture. Everybody has to say the same thing, no matter what your language is. You have to be politically correct. You cannot say outrageous things. You can't make, in other words, a time in the United States in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even as late as the 60s, where there were great comedians who made a living on ethnic jokes. They made fun of Jews, they made fun of blacks, they made fun of the Irish, they made fun of the Scotch. They lived on ethnic jokes. And everybody survived. I think the last of us probably Jackie Mason. Today, it's unheard of. It's not allowed. If you do so, you're a bigot. You're a racist. And this is all in the space of a relatively short period of time. So that's what the Torah means when it says that there was one language and everybody spoke the same. It's not that everybody had the same language and everybody had the same pronunciation, but everyone spoke the same. You were limited in what you could say. One of the great constitutional issues in the United States that the Supreme Court has dealt with for hundreds of years and never really come to its final definition is, what does freedom of speech mean? So you have the famous statement of Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes that you're not allowed to shout fire in a crowded theater when that's false, because you'll make a stampede and people will get killed. It's freedom of speech. I can say whatever I want. So how do we square that circle? One of the most difficult problems that face any democracy. So the Dora Mabul wasn't interested in that. The Dora Mabul was interested in having a good time. And by doing whatever they want, they could do it by murder, they could do it by rape, there's no limit to what the Dora Mabul can do. Once it's loosed, so yeah, we're witness to it. Kill 1,500 innocent people and goodbye. Like 1,500 is a number. You have to remember that 1,500 was 10 minutes at Auschwitz. The Dor HaFloga, this generation, the post-trauma generation, they're going to be much more careful. They're going to control everybody. They're to make certain that the heavens don't fall in again. And therefore they do it by speech control, by thought control, by all of the various methods that totalitarian societies throughout the ages have employed. And it's if you control the narrative, if you control the story, then you control people and you have them believe and do what you want. Most of the world today believes, for instance, that it was Israel that bombed the hospital. There'll be no proofs that will shake that belief, because that's control. So there eventually arises in such a society, there has to be a dictator. There has to be the one person that's in charge. Because if you have a lot of people in charge, you're going to have different ideas. You're going to have different language. You're going to have different societies, which is exactly the opposite of what that generation wanted to achieve. When they say we're going to build this tower that will reach heaven, they're saying we're going to make the perfect society. We're going to make the just society. But you got to do it my way. And the goal is so great that the people involved count for nothing. That's what Rashi means when he quotes the Medrash, that if a brick fell from the tower, they had all sorts of fits. Oh, yeah, how are we going to get that brick back up again? If a worker fell, okay, we get a different worker. If you'll think about it, our society is not far away from that. You hear in normal times, which never exists, by the way, but they used to say, a poil nafal, there was a worker and he fell, and then that's it. A worker fell, got killed while he's building something. So what happens to his family? What happened? Nothing. The main thing is to finish the project. That was the Tower of Babel. That was their attitude. Because the attitude of every conformist totalitarian society, of every controlled society, is that the individual means nothing. It's the great goal that dominates. Whether the great goal be communism, socialism, Pan-Arabism, woke, all of these are great goals. These are all towers that are being built. The person, the people, they're secondary at best. They're expendable. They're replaceable. The terrible truth is that no human being is replaceable. No human being is infinitely necessary, but no one is replaceable. The difference between Abraham and his society is that Abraham saw the individual. Why does Abraham go to war with the kings? Because he wants to save his hostages. He's not interested in the geopolitical fallout that'll happen afterwards. He doesn't care what the king of Sodom says to him. Here, you'll get this territory, you'll get this money, he's not interested in that. He came to save people. He's interested in people. In fact, he is so interested in people that when angels come to visit him, he sees them as people. The rest of the world sees people as devils. They're a problem. Chairman Mao, according to most statistics, killed 80 million Chinese for the goal. Going to make the perfect society. When you have those types of goals, then people become expendable. That's the Tower of Babel. So what did the Ribono Shel Olam do according to the Chumash? Again, in the fairy tale story, he made it that people didn't understand each other. That at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a conformist society. At the end of the day, sooner or later, it breaks down. When it breaks down, then the totalitarian image breaks down too. Then people, if they cannot say it, at least realize that the emperor has no clothes. So Nimrod becomes the emperor. The height of building the tower is Nimrod. Gibor Chayil Lifnei Hashem. Lifnei Hashem has many meanings in front of God. But one of the meanings is opposite to God. You say God, I say Nimrod. You want to know who's running the world? Nimrod is running the world. We have seen that in our time, in Hitler and Stalin and Mao and all the guys that are around today. They're running the world. Except they're not. So the Torah tells us that the Lord did a simple thing. He canceled the cancel culture. He made it that they didn't understand each other. You're telling me that this is a wonderful goal? You're telling me that boys can be girls and girls can be boys? You're crazy. I'm not going to accept that. And the moment the culture begins to break down, the tower wavers and can't be built because it doesn't brook dissension. And no room in it for someone else to say a different opinion. And one of the joys, and I mean it sincerely, it doesn't mean that whatever I otherwise say, I don't mean sincerely. But sometimes I'm more sincere than at other times. One of the joys of studying Torah is that it is always different opinions. I mean, that's one of the hardest things in Jewish education to get across to the student. Because the student, especially if the student is also taking secular studies, so 2 + 2 is 4. You cannot say 2 + 2 is 5. In that world, you cannot have different opinions about basic facts. In the Talmud, everything is up for grabs. Whatever subject you want to talk about, there are opinions. My Rebbe used to say, could be, it could be. We never understood. We say, Rebbe, what? But the wisdom of Torah is that it could be. And that's what Chazal meant when they said, Divrei Torah, Aniyim b'mokom echod, v'ashirim b'mokom acher. The words of Torah don't make sense in one circumstance, and in some other circumstance, they're clear as a bell what they mean. The absoluteness, which leads to the arrogance of the intelligentsia, doesn't exist in Torah. Rashi says one thing, the Ramban says, oh, Rashi is the greatest commentator we ever had, but I say something different. Well, you just said that Rashi is the greatest. You just said, Lo Mishpat Abchora. He's the one, he's entitled to the first opinion. And here you read a whole parish of the Torah, not like Rashi. That's the greatness of Torah, because that speaks to human beings. Human beings are not a totalitarian entity. Eventually, all totalitarian countries collapse because they're not human. And the pursuit of the goal of perfection, of making a better society, noble as that goal may sound, is to a certain extent a type of arrogance on behalf of human beings. You know, we've been at it, we're an old people. There's an ad, there was an ad in the United States for an insurance company that said, we've been around a lot, we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot. We've been through this scenario that we're going through now. We've been through it before. It's not new. It's new to those who are experiencing it. My grandchildren never went through the knowledge of the Holocaust. They never went through the knowledge of the creation of the state of Israel. They only knew that, you know, that you come for a vacation and you go to the Kotel. So there's a reminder that this is an old story. It's all been before. And there are different opinions. And let no one tell you what he knows what's going on, including our leaders, who soon will not be our leaders. But that's what happened to the Tower of Babel. The Lord introduced different opinions. The moment it introduces different opinions, then the human discourse can begin. And that's what Chazal mean when they say, Loma nikra shmo Avrom o Ivri. Why is he called Avrom o Ivri? She'kol ha'olam kulo mitzad echad v'hu me'ever hasheni. The rest of the world has one opinion, and he has another opinion. One person has another opinion. We see that in the story of Purim. Haman destroys himself because one person disagrees with him. Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtachave. Oh, who cares? I knew a rabbi that he wanted to take a rabbinic position, and his congregation wanted a vote as to whether to renew the contract. No rabbi has 100% backing. That's against, at least while he's alive. So that's against human nature. There's always, it's not this rabbi. There's another rabbi, he can speak better, he's younger, he's older, this. There's always something. So anyway, he won re-election. 82-18 was the percentage. In other words, 82% of the congregation voted for him to be continued as the rabbi. 18% wanted to fire him. So, and I knew him very well. So, like an idiot, which I often am, I congratulated him. They're great. He said, how could 18% vote against me? I realized that it should have been more than 18%. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. That's how the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world. And that's the story of the failure of the Dor HaMabul. And the failure of the Dor HaFloga. And the success of Avraham Avinu. He's on one side, he has a different opinion. He says there's one God, the pagans, you're all, you're wasting your time. People are important. I'm not interested in what the Kingdom's Dome has to give to me. So these are old lessons that the Torah is teaching us. The only thing, the whole door of a door, they are renewed under different circumstances and with different names. I think it's important for us to bear that in mind. Why does the world, people ask, why are they always bothering the Jews? Because the Jews have a different opinion in the world. That's their problem. They're a different opinion. And within the Jewish people, we can be well aware that there are different opinions. And we should see that as an asset and not as a liability. That's our greatness. And that's why we're called Bnei Avraham and not Bnei Noach. The rest of the world are Bnei Noach, because he's their ancestor. One last point that the Meforshim point out, there are many who say that Noach was alive during the Dor HaFloga. We don't hear anything from him. After the flood, we don't hear anything from him. What happened? So he got canceled. And he let himself get canceled. And that really was the true tragedy that the generation of the flood brought upon humanity. So I want to wish you all a good Shabbos and stay well and safe. And we'll hear good news. Kol Tuv Selah.
Good. Thank you. Here somewhere.